Hi, I'm Andrea. I feel most like myself when I'm playing.
Welcome to Gym Shorts, a podcast by Ophea. We're a Canadian charity that prioritizes student health, well-being, and belonging in classrooms, schools, and communities. For over 100 years, we've been working to make gym class every student's favorite part of their day. Through this podcast, we explore the powerful and personal stories behind our earliest experiences with health and physical education. In each episode, we speak with guests about experiences from school that shaped their future relationship with physical activity and well-being. These stories offer honest reflections on how our past informs the present and how we can all work together to create happier, healthier, and more inclusive futures for all students. Now, let's get into today's story. Hi, I'm Tammy Shubat, Chief Strategy Officer at Ophea. As you may know, episodes of the Gym Shorts podcast will be hosted by me, or Andrea, Ophea's curriculum consultant. Since we will be speaking to many different individuals about their experiences in health and physical education, we wanted to start out by sharing our own stories first. We're hoping this will give you a better sense of who we are and the role that gym class played in our own lives. Before we begin, a quick note. This episode contains discussions about bullying or negative school experiences that may be upsetting or triggering for some listeners. We encourage you to take care while listening and pause if you need to. With this in mind, let's begin today's conversation. Meet Andrea. As a child, she grew up in a traditional household where music and math always took priority over movement. However, the more her parents pushed her towards pursuits of the mind, the more Andrea realized her true passion was waiting for her out on a sports field.
I'm second generation Chinese. My parents were born in China. They immigrated into Canada when they were very young. They were very focused on academics. So when I say academics, I would like to use the word force. I had to play piano. I had to be music and also math. And the only way I was able to participate in sport is if I did those two things. But you know what? When I was moving, when I was playing, when I was doing team sports, that made me feel like myself. I was able to make my own choices. I was able to be a leader. And you know what? I was able to express myself through movement. To be honest, I hated piano. I hated math. I just felt like I was confined in doing what I was told to do, to be a certain way, to follow a certain script that my parents wanted. And in sports, I didn't get that. I felt myself included. I felt like I belonged. And I was very lucky to be able to also play sports alongside of what I had to do. And you know what? It transferred to high school, university, and even today.
As a second-generation Canadian, Andrea felt her inclusion in physical activity was supported by parents who could speak fluent English, which allowed her to access opportunities they never had.
Yeah, so my parents spoke fluent English because they immigrated to Canada at a very young age, in their early teens. And when they started a family, they really wanted to ensure that they had opportunities to sign them up to sports, activities, clubs, and being able to speak English gave them access. Let's be real, right? Like, I'm in schools, I work with a lot of families and students who have challenges having access outside of the school. And that's because there's a language barrier, right? So I'm very lucky. I'm very proud that my parents were able to integrate themselves and my brother and myself into the community. Them being able to speak the language definitely gave my brother and I opportunities to play, to extend our passion into movement outside of school.
But it wasn't until Andrea became a parent that her mindset truly shifted. As an accomplished athlete, Andrea was quickly faced with the reality of having a son and daughter whose path to physical activity and inclusion couldn't be more different.
To be really honest, everything changed for me when I had my kids. PD, or he would like to call He would like me to call him Peter. So he's in grade 8. And also Bella. So Bella is 16 years old. Peter is typical developing, and Bella is disabled in many ways. So she's on the autism spectrum. She has a physical disability. She's non speaking. Also, we're navigating the whole world of epilepsy for her. So she comes along. She has a lot of complex needs, you know? So I'm sharing that because everything changed when I had Bella and also raising 2 kids. And that actually shaped how I view movement.
This difference becomes clearer as Andrea recalls a playground visit where a fun family outing quickly became a stark reminder that to some, her daughter would never be treated like the other kids.
Bella is 16. She uses a wheelchair for longer distances. Walking on uneasy pathways and surfaces are very challenging for her. So when we go into playgrounds, the first thing I really want to make sure is that they're accessible, right? So in the heart of North York, this is like one of our favorite playgrounds. It's called Jumpstart Playground. So if you are ever in North York, go check it out. There's this one slide that is very successful for Bella because it's wider. I'm able to help her up the stairs to get her onto the slide. And it also allows myself or another child to go down the slide with her. So we go to that park a lot in the summer. And there's one particular moment that I remember where I'm teaching Bella how to sit down on the slide, scoot herself forward to go down the slide, because these are all things that are very challenging for her because she has many physical disabilities. So, anyways, she goes down the slide once, she's laughing, amazing, she's having fun, you know. I help her up the stairs again to go onto the slide, and there's another child that's coming towards her, and she looks like she wants to go down the slide with her. Amazing. Like, it's not often that's another child wants to play with Bella. You see this taller child at the playground who makes really different noises when she's excited. She drools a lot. She looks different, sounds different, moves differently. And here's this child who wants to play with her. So amazing. They go down the slide together and they're having fun. The third time they're going up again and they're sitting down. And I see the parent, her parent, behind me, and she's gesturing to her and gesturing with a wave and telling this child, her child, to come towards her. And I'm like, why? Like, why does she want her child to go to her? And I hear from behind me, the mom is asking her, you know what, let's go play somewhere else. Let's move away from her. She said something along those lines. And at that moment in time, I was like, wow, this is how it feels to be in a space where you don't belong. I'm in the most physically accessible playground in Toronto right now. But in that split second, with someone's comment or actions or both, made it the most inaccessible space. And that was a huge buzzkill. Like, you know, like playgrounds are supposed to be for fun. Like kids, it's a community space. And at that moment, and I've never felt that way before, where I experienced a feeling where I shouldn't be here, where my child was excluded because of who she is and how she is.
Andrea remembers a past version of herself who never pictured the family she has now. But her children continue teaching her every day how to be a better mother, teacher, and human being.
I love being a parent. I love being a parent to Bella and my son, Petey, because they teach me to be humble. You know, like when I was in high school and university, I didn't think that I would have children who were disabled, you know? And that changes your perspective in regards to how I carry myself as a teacher, as a parent, and also as a good human, you know? Raising Bella has really shaped my identity as a parent and also a teacher. I'm very lucky that I get to go into schools to work with students and also work with students with disabilities, because I always think of my own children, how they would feel if they were in a space where they didn't feel safe physically and also emotionally, right? And it's very different than how when I was a kid, I was very lucky to have positive experiences, and not all kids have those positive experiences, you know? So when I go into schools, I really make sure kids feel like they belong.
Andrea always keeps Bella in mind when she thinks about accessible phys ed. It's in these differences that she sees the true power of making the gym a space for everyone.
So I bring a lot of my own experiences with disability and raising Bella into schools. And I think a lot about the kid who is non speaking, who wants to run away from the gymnasium. I think about the kid who is stared at because they're drooling and they're in grade 8, and that's different. And even the kid who can't even enter a space because it's not accessible. So when I look at accessibility now, my kids, and especially Bella, have taught me that their differences, whether it's their disability or not, their race, their ability, how they look, it's more about acceptance of their differences. It's amazing being different. Kids have kids feel good about who they are, and they don't have to feel scared to enjoy movement.
Want to make your gym class inclusive for students of all abilities? Disability-centered movement, supporting inclusive physical education is a great place to start. Ophea's free resource offers practical examples of accommodations, disability-inclusive activities for primary, junior, and intermediate classes, and guidance on navigating individual education plans. It's a great support if you're looking to build confidence in creating inclusive, welcoming movement and physical education experiences. Check out the link in our show notes to explore the full resource, including access to our e-learning module.
Andrea, thank you for sharing so many deeply meaningful stories with us today. So many big ideas stood out to me as you were sharing. One of them is just about this idea of inclusion, and inclusion as kind of having a lot of different meanings. And so I want you to tell us a little bit about how your understanding of inclusion has evolved over time.
So this big word inclusion is actually not that complicated, okay? There's no magic lesson plan out there that will help solve or address all the differences in your class. It's not like there's no secret lesson plan. In a nutshell, inclusion is a mindset, and it takes time. I've learned even as a mom, it takes time to practice seeing spaces like schools, classrooms, even when I go to the grocery store, or the mall, or walking around my community. It's looking at spaces with an inclusion lens. And when I say inclusion lens, is there's always a way. There is always a way to help someone feel that they belong meaningfully and intentionally.
Andrea, could you elaborate a little bit more on this idea of inclusion as a mindset? Because I love that. And you talked to us a little bit about, looking at spaces with an inclusion lens. So bridge the idea of the built environment for me with the mindset.
1 year, Bella was integrated into a phys ed class. So when I use the term integration, meaning that she was in a phys ed class with peers her age. So students who are disabled and non-disabled were in phys ed together. She was in that space, included in that space. She also was given her iPad to communicate because she's non-speaking. So that's like an accommodation for her. And she was also accessing equipment so that she can move. However, when I was able to observe that class, she was on the side of the room moving with her EA, her educational assistant. So yes, she was physically included. She was in the same space as everyone else. But you know what? Was she truly and meaningfully included with her peers and playing with her peers and being able to interact with her peers like everyone else? Hard no. So when we think about inclusion and looking at spaces with an inclusive lens, it's really looking at the person in front of you and accepting them for who they are as they are. As simple as that. Now, it's complicated in some ways too, because that means that the teacher in that space or the facilitator in that space needs to look at teaching that child in a different way. So how I used to teach is very different than how I teach now. Why? The kids in front of me are different, you know?
I'm imagining myself in that teacher's shoes in that particular story. I don't know what this person would say, but I'm imagining, let's pretend she said something like, well, what about the other kids? And so can you talk to us a little bit about that and what you would say to someone who might have that frame of mind?
Okay, you want me to talk to you from my mom hat or my teacher hat?
I don't know that they would be that different, but you tell me.
As teachers, you're responsible for every single student who walks into your room. Whether you have one disabled student or 10 disabled students, you are responsible for every damn kid who walks in that room. So when a teacher says, you know what happens to the other kids? Well, I've always been doing it like that. Well, why can't we play basketball? Because they love playing basketball. If one kid doesn't feel safe and one kid can't do it, you have to teach in a different way, right? Historically, the subject area is known for, and let's be real, like, let's do our basketball unit, let's do our soccer unit, let's do our baseball unit. But you know what? Not just Bella, but there are many other kids who don't thrive in those spaces where they should only play sports. I thrive in those spaces, but kids like her don't, you know? So you have to look at it from a different perspective, right? And that's that inclusion lens I'm talking about. When I say there's always a way, there's always a way. You have to be creative. You have to, and when I think about creativity, that's how you speak, how you teach, how you position your lessons, the equipment you use, and even how you role model for the other students and how you treat other kids, right? I'm not going to just say, hey, Bella, just come over to the side and bounce this ball with your EA. I would never say that to a kid. Think about how that kid feels and how other kids see that, right? That's exclusion. That's not right.
Andrea, I'm curious if for our listeners, if you could break down what you would have done that day if you were the teacher in the room when Bella was being sidelined. How would you have approached teaching and learning?
So if I was teaching a class and there was a kid like Bella, who is disabled and moves and understands instructions very differently, I'll approach it very differently. Why? Because whether it's one learner who's disabled or 10 learners in my class who are disabled, it's me taking the time to know who's in my class that will drive how I will be teaching. So let's assume the teacher was teaching how to send and receive an object, and they happen to be choosing basketball as their lesson, Okay, you know what? The first thing I would do is take the time to understand who's in my class, the different relationships that are happening in the class, the different interests, and maybe it's centers. Maybe there is a center where students have the opportunity to send and receive a basketball into a hoop or to each other. But maybe there's also a center where there are different objects, such as a rubber chicken, sensory balls that make noise, where they're throwing it into different baskets at different heights. Because I'm also thinking about the learners who don't like basketball, right? So again, it takes creativity to find the how. Right? The what is the curriculum, the how is the magic. And to get to the how is me as a teacher taking the time to understand the kids in front of me, because that drives my how, right? And that takes time. It doesn't happen overnight, and there's no magic lesson plan that will make this class successful. It takes time. It's an art. That's what it is. It's the art of saying yes. And when I say yes, that means how am I going to include every child who walks into my classroom so that they say yes to movement and that they say yes with a smile.
I love that. I love that. I'm curious if you were to tell us about the type of teacher you would have been if you hadn't have had Bella.
Okay.
How would you describe that teacher? Well, who would you have been?
Tammy, I think you and I would not be friends if we met in elementary school and high school, because I know your backstory too with movement. I'm your jock. I love competition. I thrive in those spaces. I love winning, and even in sports, like I play rugby right now, right? And I love winning. I love dominating. I love racing. I love being fast. I love being loud. And you know what? Bella taught me to be the opposite. And thank goodness. she's helped me to be humble and to make mistakes and be okay with that. I'm a perfectionist. I'm your type A. I'm going to practice and be the best on the pitch. And sometimes that's not success, right? She's taught me that, you know what? This is how it feels to not be part of a group. And I need to be better.
Andrea, I want to circle back to Petey, your son, a little bit. So he's been part of this narrative. You've told us about your story. Tell us about how he has grown alongside his sister, and what has he learned along this journey, do you think?
So my son Petey is currently in grade 8, so he's younger than Bella. And since he was born, this is his norm. Like he's grown up in following Bella to all of her therapy sessions, her physiotherapy sessions, her speech and language therapy sessions, all of our visits to the hospitals. This is his norm. And when I say his norm, differences are normal for him. Being around people who are in wheelchairs, who move different, who communicate differently, he's seen it. When I describe him, he's a young carer. He's a leader. I don't have to worry about him. He understands that his life is very different because of Bella, and I mean that in a positive way. And I think this has also really helped him understand that, you know what? When he's in his spaces without Bella, he knows what it's like when you may not be the most athletic person in the class, and he also knows what it's like when you are, and the power dynamics that happen in schools and in classrooms. He sees it very clearly from how teachers give instructions, how they treat kids in his class. He gets it. He knows what a safe space is and what an unsafe space is.
I love that. It's bringing me to think a little bit about just advice. And I know throughout our conversation you've provided advice, but I would almost want to say, if you could sum up your advice to teachers in schools today, what would you say is that golden nugget you want folks to take away from today's conversation?
People who are disabled are different. And my advice to teachers out there who may not have as much experience teaching and being around people who are disabled, that's okay. It takes time to do something new, anything new. But know that students who are disabled, they want the same thing as every other kid and you. They want to be able to walk into a space where they don't have to be scared to be who they are, that they can make the noises that they need to make, that they can move the way they want to move, and that they have access to be part of the whole. So if you're a teacher out there and you're listening and this speaks to you, you're there. That's that inclusion lens. Be open to learning and teaching in a different way. Bella is in grade 11 now, and I've learned that, you know what, even the teacher with the most credentials of teaching someone who is disabled can only go so far. But a teacher who has that open mind to take that time to learn about my daughter and how she learns best and the family that's attached to her, that is the best teacher out there.
Thank you so much, Andrea. I feel like this sort of wraps up our conversation for today, but I really, really appreciate everything that you've shared with us.
Thank you.
This episode was hosted by me, Tammy Shubat, and was produced by Mike Meehan. Our theme song and music was written and performed by Ron Kelly. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and leave a review. Your support helps us grow and reach more educators, students, and changemakers. Until next time, let's keep moving, questioning, and creating space for every student to thrive.